Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Usually I don't talk about my spooky, messed up experiences with anyone, but this one's a special case, so here goes. Some context beforehand. For the past 5 years or so, I've been getting increasingly more interested in the folklore around my area. South Florida, somewhere around there, in the paranormal, cryptozoology in general. Couple of years back, me and my grandpa decided to go camp at a forest relatively close to our house to go hunting. Preparing some last-minute stuff before we packed them in the car.
Anon, before we go, I need to tell you something.
What is it?
There's talk that there's something underneath the forest, Anon. At night it wakes up and starts breathing slowly, the trees swaying up and down as it breathes in and out.
Seems legit. JPEG. To this day, I genuinely don't know if he believed it or if he was just trying to spook me. Anyways, we finish packing our stuff and leave. Bored as F in the passenger seat listening to the radio when he suddenly goes,
Listen, Anon, we must not make too much noise at night.
Why's that, Gramps? The wildlife.
The soil might listen, Anon. It could notice that we're on it.
Get tired of his bull and say, Gramps, what are you talking about? Wish I could have said that to him, but I was probably more polite.
You haven't heard the news, Anon?
This old coot.
Recently, one of the locals found cracks in the ground near his property, which is neighboring the forest.
Now I can't decipher what's true and what isn't. It could have been anything else, Gramps. Maybe the soil got too dry.
The cracks were too large to be that, Anon.
We're silent the rest of the ride. Finally get to the hunting spot. It was a really long drive. My bladder felt like it was on fire. Entrance is surrounded by this old metal or barbed wire fence. It's a couple of minutes before sunset. The whole place looked dead. Hey Gramps, you sure this is the place?
Yes, Anon. Why did I scare you?
We start unpacking our gear. Start looking for a good flat spot to set up camp. Notice some odd terrain in the corner of my eye. Hey Gramps, come look at this.
It's those same gaps, Anon. Told you I wasn't lying.
This really unsettled me, but his snarky attitude was enough to make me forget about it. Continue trekking the dense jungle and notice more of those weird bumps and cracks. I still can't describe this to people, but they almost resembled an overcooked loaf of bread. It was getting late and we still had not found a good spot. Still wonder if he was intentionally stalling for time to creep me out.
Okay, Anon, the spot's right this way.
It better be. He directs me to a small patch of flatlands surrounded by dense trees and tall grass. Is it here?
Of course it's here, Anon. Start setting up your tent. Don't make too much noise.
Lord have mercy. JPEG. We finish setting up everything and are both really tired. Decide to hop in the tent and start resting for tomorrow. Close my eyes and doze off. No clue what Gramps is doing. Pray to God that he's in his tent as well. Around midnight.
Anon.
I think I didn't respond the first few times. He didn't stop calling me until I woke up. What is it?
Anon, do you feel that?
I feel it. PNG. I'm still not sure if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but something was definitely trembling across our area.
Anon, stay in your place and don't move until I tell you to.
Gramps, what did you do?
Anon, just whisper. If you scream like that, it won't stop.
I could feel the tent bobbing up and down. It wasn't brute like an earthquake. It was almost softer. I'm still not sure how to explain this feeling. It stayed like this for almost an hour. I lost track of time because of my sheer bewilderment, I think. Try to fall asleep through all of this and pass it off as a dream. Struggled to. It feels like ages when it finally stops. Realize that it's already 4 or 5 in the morning. Take a while to stretch and crack my knuckles. Step out of the tent. My hands were trembling and I was sweating like a pig.
You look like you just stepped off the roller coaster, Anon.
I'm gonna strangle this geriatric. JPEG. Take my flask and pour out all of the water onto my face. Took a while to get adjusted to standing up. Felt like vomiting. Gramps had brought out his little lawn chair. He was reading a small book. Don't remember what book it was.
Go wash off all that sweat, Anon. There is a small creek in the west. Don't get lost.
You're not going to leave me there.
Anon, you smell terrible. Please go wash off. We're going hunting later.
I don't know if he was intentionally acting calmly to mess with me even more. I honestly didn't care then. Was still processing what had happened, I guess. Grabbed some bottled water and drank it halfway. It was really warm, but I didn't think much of it. Started walking in the direction Gramps told me to. I didn't even need the feel to bathe. I think I just wanted something to do to get my mind off of it. As I walked further and I didn't notice a lot of animals, mainly just some bugs and birds. They all probably fled because of the trembling. What are we going to hunt now? Could hear the creak in the distance when I caught something off to the side. A freakishly long patch of trees had fallen from their bases and onto the ground. Tick related. What am I looking at? .png. They didn't look like they just fell down, they looked like they were uprooted from the base. Walk away and cross down into the creek. Wash off for a long while, making sure I took as long as possible so I didn't have to walk back the path again. I recall that it took me a long while to find my way back to camp. When I got there, Gramps was already trying to shoot down some birds with his rifle.
Anon, what took you so long?
I got lost.
Can't you tell directions apart? Come on, grab your rifle, Anon.
Was nearly at my breaking point. Screw it, maybe going hunting would keep my mind off of it. Pick up my rifle and load a mag into it, take some extras with me.
Okay, Anon, follow close behind. I know a good spot.
All the animals have run off by now, Gramps. A lot of trees have toppled regardless, so we can't move through the forest.
Yes, Anon, but not in the spot I have in mind.
This really worried me, as he had mentioned that the trembling happened throughout the entire forest. We took some more extra supplies and left. It was already getting late. We had spent a very long time walking and I was extremely fatigued. Gramps, are you sure this is the way? It's getting darker.
Anon, can you stop complaining? We're close, calm down.
I'm gonna die. .png. After what felt like days, we finally arrive. I couldn't believe my eyes. While the rest of the dense forest looked like a wasteland, this specific spot looked almost pristine, as if the trembling hadn't even touched it. From what I can remember, the soil felt much more spongy and hollow, as if it was more moist than usual. To my surprise, there were some white-tailed deer resting in a vacant spot.
Told you, Anon. Now settle down and start planning your shot. They're all together, so we must be careful.
I was hesitant to shoot first. Told him my hands were too shaky, but he insisted. Decided to pick off the farthest away from the group. Held down the trigger and shot. The rest of the flock ran away as expected, but I saw something odd in the spot where I shot.
Looks like you missed. Let's go after the rest of the group.
Ignored him and walked over to the spot where my bullet hit. To this day, me and Gramps still have no idea what we found in that spot. There was a mass of black roots inching its way out of the hole the bullet punched through the hole. I don't remember very clearly what happened next, but I'll try to summarize best as I can. The black mass squirmed inward from the hole. It almost looked like a big pile of worms or maggots, but I'm positive that it was neither of those things. We heard some shuffling coming from the surrounding grassland. We didn't get a good look at the movement because it was pitch black, but we knew that it couldn't be good.
Forget it, Anon. Let's pack our stuff and leave.
This time I didn't hesitate to listen to him. We rushed through the path back to the camp. I could feel the trembling starting beneath us.
Anon, don't look back. Keep moving forward.
I could hear the trees violently rising behind me. I have a very difficult time describing it, but it almost sounded like being in the middle of a bamboo forest. Trip on a log in the middle of our path. Think I'm about to die to whatever this thing is when Gramps grabs my hand. Stand back up and pick up the pace again. I can see our lanterns in the distance. Camp was bobbing up and down in sync with the trees behind us.
Anon, forget the camp. Run straight to the camp. Just pick up your lantern.
At this point, I could care less about our supplies, so I agreed with him on that. Make a rush to the car, squinting in the dark so I didn't trip on anything again. It was getting louder, like it was mad at us or something. I'm not sure if it was my mind playing tricks on me again. Finally get to the car and throw myself inside. Gramps turns the ignition on and we get out of there. Completely silent for the entire drive to the nearest town. We refuel at the nearest gas station and decide to spend the night at a tiny lousy motel. Can't sleep for the rest of the night. Catch myself experiencing the same effects as last time. Appalled at what I just saw. Gramps has not spoken a word to me since we got into the car. It's been a while since this happened. I've looked around on X and even on different websites and still haven't found a concrete explanation for it. Excuse me for terrible handwriting. I'm not the best at summarizing stories like this. Anyway, from what I've gathered, it was around this area, doing a rough estimate since I don't want to dox myself accidentally on 4chan.
Don't know if it's paranormal, but it was a kind of spoopy one. Be living in the Ozarks. Ask a bro if he wants to go squirrel hunting. It's cold, like 10 degrees with heavy wind, overcast, shin-deep snow. It's been miserable cold for a week, but supposed to finally get a break in the cloud cover. Figure they'll start moving once the sun comes out. Spend the whole damn day hiking like 5 miles. Sun never comes out, cold as ice, beard literally full of ice. Right before we turn around to head back, something walks out into the trail ahead of us about 300 yards off. Takes a second to tell what it is. It's the biggest coyote I've ever seen. Easily the size of a medium white tail. It's limping pretty bad. Kind of circles around and then heads into the brush. Bro and I look at each other and talk it out. We decide to put it out of its misery since it looks pretty badly hurt and spring is a long way off. Not too stoked about chasing a big-ass coyote in the brush, but snow is thick so it should be easy to follow. We take a few minutes to talk it over. By the time we make a decision, it comes back out of the brush. It's walking just fine and looks our way. We're happy we don't have to put it down, so we watch it for a minute until it disappears and then head back. On the way back, we keep seeing big-ass coyote tracks on or near our trail. Once we reach a hill, I look back and see ITR watching us from about a quarter mile off. I let hunting bro know. He turns back and sees it right as it takes off into the brush again. Spend the rest of the hike back watching our rear while hunting bro watches on each side of the trail. Get to vehicle, toss stuff in car and drive off real quick. We've been out there a lot since then. We only see it when the weather is bad, and only at a distance. I'm planning on getting all gillied up this winter and getting it. I want to make a cowl out of him.
22 years old at the time, turkey hunting in Innawoods. Find small lane to watch on the edge of a valley where I've bagged turkey before. Army Corps land, but so far and I seldom see, hear, meet other hunters. Get cozy with a mat and pillow against a tree and wait for hours after hiking a ways from my small camp. You aren't supposed to set up a tent or build a fire out there, so I just made a small shelter out of fallen wood and leaves to hide my extra stuff. Hear what sounds like mumbling coming from the ridge behind me. After a while it stops, but I hear it again off to the left of where I'm sitting. Occasional twig snap or leaf crunch from that same direction. See 5 men on the ridgeline to the left. One is carrying the backpack I'd stashed with my rations and hiking gear. One has a pair of binoculars out scanning the valley, including where I'm waiting. They have rifles, machetes, and one has a backpack with a frame. The kind that costs a lot of money. 2 look homeless, unkempt, and drugged out. 2 others look what I'd call average. The last one, the one with the binoculars, has darker skin and looks grizzled. I don't move an inch after tilting my head to see them, keep my shotgun under my arms so it doesn't stick out. They wait on that ridge for about an hour talking, then start walking down into the valley towards the shooting lane. One of the tweaker-looking ones calls out for whoever is there to come out. I finally tilt my head back down towards the lane to watch them more. Realize they're all wearing backpacks, except they all look empty. After some time they walk up the opposite side of the valley and start searching, talking again. I let them get further into the woods and take my opportunity to leave. Get worried they left someone guarding my camp area and take an alternate path out towards the road and clearing where I parked, but it's about an hour-long hike away. Take a break after about 20 minutes and notice a footpath intersects the area I've been trudging through. It doesn't look like a deer path and there are beer bottles, cans scattered along it. I follow it a little ways and notice that there is some kind of rotten lattice laying in the footpath. It's a crappy pungy pit trap complete with metal spikes buried in the ground. Get off path and my hat snags on a piece of fishing line towards the edge. Panic and slowly untangle myself. It's some kind of marker hanging from a limb and not another booby trap. Decide this is too dangerous and cut back towards my camp area. Sure enough, as I close and I can see a red baseball cap and hear some kind of music playing from a phone. Screw that .jpg. I was afraid to make noise so I just hunkered down and waited. About an hour later and his buddies came back. 2 of them were speaking some kind of Spanish and now their backpacks were full. They walk off from my camp heading towards the path I wandered off and walk within 10 to 15 yards of me. Thank God my commo was good enough that they meandered right past. Part way to the footpath they discard empty camp fuel tins and a backpack full of God knows what. I wait till it's almost dark and shamble as quietly as I can during dusk towards where I parked. At this point I was thirsty, hungry, and my nerves were racked. Finally get to my truck and hightail it out of there at dark. 2 vehicles were parked at the exit of the inlet road. They must have missed my truck hidden in the clearing, but waited at the only exit. The 2 vehicles start pulling out and turning to follow me so quickly they didn't even turn their lights on for a good minute. I gun it and figure either they'll kill me if wrecking off the gravel road will. My old Ford Ranger is having trouble outrunning them. They are gaining and now it's dark so it's getting harder to stay on the road. turn my lights off and madly weave down other dirt and gravel roads that I'm only vaguely familiar with, praying to every god I know that I don't accidentally hit a dead end. Slap into a decrepit low-water crossing and the creek flowing over it almost washes me into the stream. The car behind me bottoms out and stops. The other vehicle looked like a Jeep and powered through without missing a beat. Make it to pavement with the Jeep still hot on my tail, not quite close enough to read my plates, but close enough that I'm starting to sweat. The Jeep flashing a floodlight and his high beams and starts gaining on me once again. See blue lights burst into life behind me. They are hanging some kind of eBay mock police light out the passenger window to get me to stop. Screw you, screw that, screw this. Still about 35 minutes from the nearest town. Slam the gas pedal to the floor and push my truck to its max speed on a straightaway. Feather the brakes when I'm just out of sight of the Jeep and haphazardly turn down a random road. Pull into a dirt road and slam my brakes because I almost hit a building. I just flew up someone's driveway and cut a huge rut trying to stop. I kill the engine and wait. See the family inside peeking out a window and no doubt grabbing a shotgun to come see what I'm all about. Oh God, oh please don't turn on your porch light. Porch light comes on, but I still don't hear or see the Jeep. Two men come out of the building and sure enough one is holding a tactical shotgun. Roll my window down and tell them someone had road rage and tried to run me off the main road. They buy it and offer to call a sheriff. Tell them just to leave me their name and phone and I'd come fix their driveway tomorrow and that if they don't mind I'll collect my senses then head out. They are chill AF and just relieved I'm not a maniac or drunk driver. Leave about 30 minutes later and never return to that spot. Half a year later, sheriffs and some kind of bigwigs bust a huge meth camp out in the middle of the woods. Only caught it because the meth heads cornered and threatened to kill a local who went that way looking for rocks and arrowheads. The headline came and went and now rangers randomly put her down those back roads. People are still finding booby traps and backpacks full of meth waste and trash.
I've been fortunate or unfortunate enough to only have one kind of spooky experience myself. In high school. Walking around with my friend in the woods behind his house. Been in these woods thousands of times since we were in elementary school. Just chatting as we come up to a rocky hill, open sky above. Later in the day, not quite dusk, but it's coming fast. Not usually a problem. Again, been in this place more times than we can count even at night. Walked this exact path. Stop on the hill just talking. Hold up, you hear that? We stop for a second and listen. Oh, say, can you see? There's very faint singing coming from down in the woods. Somebody's singing the Star-Spangled Banner. Neck hairs raised up. We listen for a second. We decide to check it out. To go in the direction of the singing, the path goes a little way down the hill and takes a bend back into the trees. As we turn the bend, we both just stop in our tracks. The entrance back into the woods from the hill is practically a wall of darkness, seems way darker than it should be, and still there's this barely perceptible singing coming from within. Neither of us can force ourselves to move another inch forward. Just turn tail and basically run back the way we came to friend's house. And that's really it. It sounds kind of silly in retrospect being scared of someone singing the national anthem in the woods, but at the time hearing it and coming up to the mouth of the woods, basically every instinct in my body was saying to GTFO. Additional bonus spook is that when my friend and I talked about it later, we both heard the same singing, but I heard an adult man's voice and he swore it was a little girl singing.
Bime, Australian. Unfortunate, I know. About 26 at that point. Come into possession of a large rural property west of Terry in Hunter Valley and a very large chunk of cash after my grandfather's passing. Decide screw it after a while and decide to settle there to become relatively self-sufficient and just to be left alone, to be honest. Buy some chickens, some goats, and just for fun, just because I was able to, a mule. I love this creature beyond all belief. Was already saddle trained by the time I got him. Name him Jack. Fast forward a few months. Be part of an equestrian hiking club up in the Blue Mountains. Kind of an oddball though, since most of the other members of the group I usually ride with are young girls and their ponies, normally alongside one or both of their parents. All except our supervisor, guide, Noah, an ABBA guy with a rough-cut whaler horse named Steel. Most hikes usually end up with me sticking to the back of the pack and talking with Noah. This goes on for months. Practically a supervisor myself now, often asked to help out with issues on the road. Usually pulling younger riders up on their rein, saddle or foot position, or despooking other horses. Come to really appreciate how calm and collected my mule is in comparison. Noah trusts me immensely, can see I've got my life together. Asks me if I would want to come on a multi-day trip through the national park and up past Noon's Plateau with another group. Hell yeah. JPG. Make preparations. Get there with Jack, greeted by Noah and a bunch of older, more experienced riders with actual full-sized horses for once. Goes off without a hitch for the first day. Cut to that night. Everyone's hitched their animals and have set up camp for the night. 2 a.m. Being a light sleeper, I am immediately aware that something has severely spooked one of the horses. Stamping, whining, making a real scene. All the other horses were awake, whickering nervously at each other. Get out there since I realize nobody else will. Get a little bit spooked myself as the horse doesn't calm down right away even with my methods. Starts kicking behind itself. Grab flashlight. Check behind it. Hear a sort of tromping scuttle from whatever it was in sea leaves being kicked up from the upper corners of my flashlight. Assumed it was just a wombat or a swamp wallaby or something. Definitely sounded like one. And they're both common around here anyway. Hagrid should not have done that. PNG. Cut to the next day. Wake up tired as per usual. Noah tells everyone that this is going to be the longest part of the trip, and will likely take until late evening to get to the next campsite. Perfect. JPEG. Saddle up, Jack, we get on with it. Walking all day, couple of pit stops for water and breaks. Sun starts setting as we get relatively close to the next site. Jack starts acting up in the middle of the trail. Only just noticed that he'd picked up a load of ticks on one of his legs, on the same foot that he busted a shoe on a few days before the trip, and was still getting used to the new one. Tell Noah I gotta deal with this, wants everyone to stop. Urge him onwards, tell him I won't be long and that the trail's obvious from here. He trusts me enough to know what I'm doing, but pleads with me to not get lost along the way, says that he'd leave a fire or something going so I could find them. Get to picking. Somehow didn't notice that Jack apparently had a small nick across from his hoof, which is what attracted all the ticks. Pick out all the ticks from his leg, clean his wound with antibacterial wipes, check his shoe. All this takes about 20 minutes. 20 minutes we didn't have. The sun was just barely there, could only just see the trail. Looking for the light of a fire or something up ahead. Nothing. Inevitably, we took a wrong turn. Wander up the side of a mountain for about 15 minutes, not knowing where we were going. Jack suddenly, in the middle of what was supposedly the trail, gives a quick snort and abruptly stops. Ears pricked directly forwards. Give him a tap, try to get him to move forward a bit. Nothing. Gently tug on his reins to get him to focus. Nothing. He is completely seized up. I know this animal very intimately, and know that he only does this if something has really spooked him. Start to feel very uneasy myself. Pull on his reins a little harder. Jack turns his head very slightly towards me. Only just enough that I can see the whites of his eyes are fully exposed. Scared now. Small rustling is heard in front of us. Jack snaps his head forward again, splays his front feet slightly. Keep talking to him softly and patting his haunches, trying to calm him down. In reality, I think I was trying to reassure myself more than the mule. Suddenly become blisteringly aware of the silence. Complete and utter silence. No owls or possums calling out. No frogs, no crickets. Nothing but my own slightly labored breathing. Hear small rock get dislodged behind us. Jack flinches, starts slowly stepping back. Instantly, I hear that tromping scuttle I heard before coming at us from behind and in front. Jack loses it. Makes a sound I have never heard come out of an animal before or since. Jumps a full foot in the air with a sprawling rear-legged kick, almost completely throwing me from his saddle. Bolts down the mountain at breakneck speed. Meanwhile, during that jump, one of my boots got caught in the left stirrup iron. Now being dragged over jagged rocks down a mountain at immense speeds by my left leg that's still attached to the saddle of a terrified mule. Whoop-dee-doo. Despite protecting my head with my arm, I'm still acutely aware that the scuttling sound is still directly next to us. Can barely see anything. It's almost completely dark, only just make out that leaves and rocks are being kicked up about a meter next to us, somehow managing to keep pace. Desperately try to make purchase on anything I can to try and pull myself up back onto the saddle. Manage to somehow grab onto what I can only assume was the saddle flap and hoist myself up a little way. Bad idea.png. Arm protecting my head makes violent contact with a massive rock pointing out of the ground. Wrist gets dislocated. Oh. Not a moment after, the scuttling to my side gets much louder and I feel what I could only picture to be a talon strike the side of my head, making a deep cut just above my temple. One might assume it was another rock, but rocks don't cling to the place they cut you. Jack cries out and almost tramples me, trying not to trip over himself. Resisting the urge to crap myself, I somehow managed to flail my body upwards enough to give me enough clarity to grab onto the saddle's pommel without my legs slipping through the stirrup and hoist myself back up with one hand. Basically clinging to Jack for dear life now. My face keeps getting whipped by tree branches as we finally manage to reach the bottom of the mountain, directly into camp. Didn't even notice the light of the bonfire we were rushing towards. Had my head down, focusing on the trees and the ever-impending and ever-closing and scuttling next to us on both sides. Jack also apparently didn't expect this, as when he suddenly hit flat ground after the downwards incline, he completely toppled over, now fully throwing me from his saddle and onto the hard stony dirt below. He was fine, I was not. He got up almost immediately, kicking and braying and spooking all the other horses and sending everyone in the camp into a panic. I just writhed there for a moment, winded and in a lot of pain, just trying to get up and run. Noah rushes to me, hands all over me, trying to set me right. In his defense, I did have blood streaming from the side of my head, was covered in deep scratches and had a limp wrist. Managed to wheeze out, hand me a flashlight.
A flashlight. You need a doctor.
Hand me a flashlight. Could still hear them. The scuttling, the rustling. It was still there, pacing around the camp. The spooked brays and squeals of the horses, and the concerned babbling of the people in camp almost seemed muffled in comparison to the sound of what I knew was there, pacing around the edges of the fire's light. Got handed my flashlight. Could hear one of them, not but 10 meters away. Shine my light directly at where I knew it was. Nothing. A flurry of leaves and small twigs were kicked up as it skittered up the small gully it was on like a frightened lizard. But there was nothing, no form there to be seen. Turn off flashlight. Turn to Noah. We can't stay here tonight.
What do you mean? What did you do?
I stand up. Look him dead in the face. We can't stay here tonight. I don't actually remember much after that. I know that Noah patched me up and acted very creeped out. We were forced to stay there for the night, but I refused to let anyone douse the fire, and everyone and their horses were up all night. Everyone blamed me for being tired the next morning and having to cut the trip short so I could get proper medical attention. I didn't care. All I remember doing is sitting on a log, listening to those things circle our camp until sunrise, then spending about 4 days in hospital while my brother took care of Jack. Obviously, I haven't been back there since.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.